I wanted it to be you. I wanted it to be you so badly.
There was a time when it felt impossible to imagine a romantic comedy without Meg Ryan. Throughout the late 1980s and much of the 1990s, her smile seemed to brighten every movie screen, her warmth made audiences believe in love again, and her effortless charm transformed ordinary stories into unforgettable classics. She wasn't simply another successful actress. She became a symbol of an era when Hollywood still believed that kindness, vulnerability, and genuine chemistry could carry a film. Millions of people watched her fall in love on screen, laughed with her, cried with her, and perhaps saw a little of themselves in every character she portrayed. Then, almost as suddenly as she had risen, she seemed to disappear. The woman who once commanded some of the highest salaries in Hollywood faded from the spotlight, leaving many fans wondering the same question for years: what really happened to Meg Ryan? Was it one scandal? Was it Hollywood itself? Or was the truth far more complicated than the headlines ever suggested? To understand the answers, we have to return to the beginning, long before she became America's sweetheart, when she was simply a young woman with dreams that had nothing to do with movie stardom. Born Margaret Mary Emily Ann Hyra on November 19, 1961, in Fairfield, Connecticut, Meg Ryan never imagined herself walking red carpets or starring in blockbuster films. Unlike many future actors who spent their childhood dreaming of Hollywood, she was drawn toward journalism. She enrolled at New York University, believing her future would be spent writing stories rather than becoming one. Like countless college students, however, she needed a way to support herself financially. To earn extra money, she accepted small television commercial jobs, promoting everything from toothpaste to fast food. They were ordinary assignments, hardly the kind of work anyone would remember, yet those brief appearances revealed something impossible to teach. The camera loved her. There was an approachable quality about her smile, an honesty in her expressions, and a natural ease that made audiences feel as though they already knew her. That unexpected gift soon opened a new door. In 1981, at only 20 years old, Ryan made her feature film debut with a small role in Rich and Famous. Although the part lasted only a few moments, it marked the beginning of a journey she never planned. Soon afterward, she adopted the professional name Meg Ryan, borrowing her grandmother's maiden name, and accepted a regular role on the CBS daytime soap As the World Turns. Between 1982 and 1984, millions of daytime viewers watched her grow more confident in front of the camera, and producers quickly realized this young blonde actress possessed something that couldn't be manufactured: genuine likability. By the time she packed her bags for Los Angeles in 1984, she wasn't yet a star, but Hollywood had begun to notice that something special was quietly taking shape. The move to Los Angeles proved to be the turning point that changed everything. Like so many young actors arriving in Hollywood, Meg Ryan spent her early years accepting whatever opportunities came her way, never knowing which one might become the breakthrough. In 1986, she appeared in Top Gun, a film that would become one of the defining blockbusters of the decade. Her role as Carol Bradshaw, the devoted wife of Goose, was relatively small, yet audiences remembered her. She wasn't trying to steal the spotlight or overwhelm the screen. Instead, she brought a warmth and sincerity that lingered long after her scenes were over. It was the kind of performance that quietly stayed in people's minds, and for the first time, Hollywood executives began recognizing that this young actress possessed something audiences genuinely connected with. Not every project that followed was a success. Armed and Dangerous failed to impress critics or moviegoers, reminding Ryan that success in Hollywood was never guaranteed. Yet setbacks never seemed to discourage her. She continued accepting different kinds of roles, determined to prove she was more than another pretty face. Her performance in Promised Land earned praise from critics, and hinted at dramatic abilities that had not yet been fully explored. But it was 1987's science fiction comedy Inner Space that truly changed the direction of her career. Starring opposite Dennis Quaid, Ryan displayed an effortless comic rhythm that felt completely natural. Their chemistry was impossible to ignore, both on-screen and behind the scenes, where a real romance quietly began to blossom. Audiences weren't simply watching two talented actors perform. They were witnessing two people genuinely falling in love, and that authenticity gave the film an emotional spark that couldn't be manufactured. By the end of the decade, Meg Ryan had become one of the industry's most promising new stars. Then came the film that changed not only her career, but the romantic comedy genre itself. In 1989, director Rob Reiner and writer Nora Ephron introduced audiences to When Harry Met Sally, pairing Ryan with Billy Crystal in a story that explored one timeless question. Can a man and a woman ever truly be just friends? Ryan's portrayal of Sally Albright was unlike the glamorous heroines audiences had grown accustomed to. She was funny, intelligent, occasionally frustrating, deeply vulnerable, and wonderfully human. The famous diner scene instantly entered movie history, while Ryan's unforgettable performance earned Golden Globe and BAFTA nominations. Almost overnight, she became America's sweetheart, the face of modern romance, and the actress every studio wanted to cast. Without realizing it, Meg Ryan had begun defining an entire generation of romantic comedies. For much of the 1990s, it seemed as though Meg Ryan simply couldn't miss. Every few years, another romantic comedy arrived, and audiences eagerly returned to theaters, knowing exactly what they would receive: warmth, laughter, and the comforting belief that love could still conquer uncertainty. Her collaborations with Tom Hanks became the gold standard for modern romance on screen. Sleepless in Seattle captured the imagination of millions in 1993, proving that two characters could spend almost an entire film apart and still create unforgettable chemistry. 5 years later, You've Got Mail embraced the dawn of the internet age, while reminding audiences that genuine human connection would always matter more than technology. Together, those films helped define an entire generation, and Meg Ryan became one of the few actresses whose name alone could persuade audiences to buy a ticket. At the height of her career, studios were paying her between $10 and $15 million per film, placing her among the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood. Yet behind the smiling magazine covers and seemingly perfect public image, cracks had already begun to appear. Fame has a way of creating expectations that are almost impossible to satisfy, especially when an actor becomes closely identified with one particular image. To millions of fans, Meg Ryan wasn't simply playing lovable women searching for happiness. She had become that woman in their minds. The cheerful, trustworthy girl next door who always found love by the final scene slowly became a role she was expected to perform both on and off the screen. It was a burden few actors could carry forever. Everything changed in 2000 while filming Proof of Life alongside Russell Crowe. Reports of a romantic relationship between the two actors quickly dominated newspapers and entertainment television. At the same time, Ryan's marriage to Dennis Quaid came to an end after nearly a decade together. Although Ryan later suggested that the marriage had been struggling long before the headlines appeared, public opinion had already reached its verdict. America's sweetheart suddenly found herself portrayed as the villain in her own story. The same media that had celebrated her for years now seemed eager to dismantle the image they had helped create. Hollywood can be remarkably forgiving of scandal when it involves certain stars, but for an actress whose entire career had been built on warmth, innocence, and romantic optimism, the backlash proved especially severe. Almost overnight, Meg Ryan discovered that losing the public's affection could happen far more quickly than earning it. Although the scandal may have changed public perception, it was only one chapter in a much larger story. Meg Ryan refused to disappear without trying to reinvent herself. In 2001, Kate and Leopold reminded audiences of the romantic charm that had made her famous, but the Hollywood landscape was already changing. Romantic comedies were no longer dominating the box office as they once had, and Ryan herself seemed determined to escape the image that had defined her entire career. That desire led to one of the boldest decisions she ever made. In 2003, she accepted the lead role in Jane Campion's psychological thriller, In the Cut, portraying a character unlike anything audiences had ever associated with her. The film included explicit scenes and explored far darker emotional territory than the light-hearted romances that had made her a household name. Ryan hoped the performance would demonstrate her range as an actress. Instead, many longtime fans struggled to accept such a dramatic transformation. Critics were divided. The film performed poorly at the box office, and rather than opening new opportunities, it seemed to widen the distance between Meg Ryan and the audience that had loved her for so many years. As the years passed, another conversation began to overshadow her work. Public attention shifted away from her performances and toward relentless speculation about her appearance. Every public event generated fresh headlines, comparing old photographs with new ones, and debating whether cosmetic procedures had altered the familiar face audiences remembered from the 1980s and 1990s. Ryan herself rarely responded to the rumors, choosing instead to remain private. But the scrutiny reflected a deeper truth about Hollywood. Aging gracefully was expected, yet visibly trying to resist aging often invited even harsher criticism. It was a contradiction many actresses of her generation understood all too well. Rather than continue chasing the spotlight, Ryan gradually stepped away from it. She adopted her daughter, Daisy True Ryan, devoted more time to raising both Daisy and her son Jack, and built a quieter life away from Los Angeles. Health challenges, including chronic hip problems and arthritis, also made the pace of Hollywood less appealing. Instead of constantly seeking the next starring role, she began focusing on family, personal well-being, and creative projects on her own terms. In 2015, she directed and starred in Ithaca, marking an important turning point. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it represented something perhaps even more meaningful. After years of allowing the industry and the media to define her story, Meg Ryan had finally begun writing the next chapter herself. In 2023, Meg Ryan quietly returned to the genre that had made her a household name with What Happens Later, a romantic comedy she directed, produced, co-wrote, and starred in. It wasn't designed to compete with the blockbusters of today's Hollywood. Instead, it felt like a gentle conversation with the audience that had grown older alongside her. The sparkle was still there, although softened by experience rather than youthful innocence. More importantly, Ryan seemed completely at peace with where life had taken her. She has spoken openly about refusing to let endless public speculation define her, choosing instead to focus on creativity, family, and living life on her own terms. Meanwhile, her son, Jack Quaid, has established an impressive acting career of his own, introducing the Ryan Quaid legacy to an entirely new generation of moviegoers. Looking back today, it is tempting to reduce Meg Ryan's story to a single scandal or one controversial decision. But real lives are rarely that simple. Hollywood changed. Audience tastes evolved. The romantic comedy itself slowly faded from the center of popular culture, and the pressures placed upon actresses became more unforgiving with every passing year. Meg Ryan certainly made choices that sparked debate, but she also faced expectations that few people could have carried forever. The same industry that celebrated her youth expected her to remain unchanged, an impossible standard that countless performers have struggled against. Perhaps that is why her films continue to resonate decades later. When we revisit When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, or You've Got Mail, we are reminded not of tabloid headlines, but of a performer whose warmth, humor, and emotional honesty made millions believe in love, hope, and second chances. Those qualities cannot be erased by time, changing appearances, or shifting public opinion. In the end, Meg Ryan's greatest legacy isn't that she was once Hollywood's highest-paid romantic comedy star. It's that she became the face of an era that many people still remember with enormous affection. And perhaps that's the real measure of a lasting career. Not how brightly someone shines for a moment, but how warmly they are remembered long after the spotlight has faded. If you enjoyed revisiting this remarkable Hollywood journey with me, I'd love to hear which Meg Ryan film still holds a special place in your heart. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep the magic of classic cinema alive, and I'll see you in the next story.